The Epstein Files Transparency Act that I introduced with Ben Ray Lujan in the Senate was crystal clear. No record shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted on the basis of any of the following: embarrassment, reputational harm, political sensitivity, including any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. Well, here we are. Those 99 days have passed, and what we have seen is the files have not been released according to the law. We have seen that victims' names and photos that were supposed to be redacted weren't redacted, and all kinds of redactions appear to have occurred for folks who are potential perpetrators. And we're seeing the Epstein files reverberate across the world. The Prime Minister of Norway, the former ambassador from Britain to the United States, King Charles' brother. But what about here in the United States of America? Why is there no accountability here in the United States of America for these atrocious crimes, the place where they occurred? We know that there were about 6 million pages, of which only somewhat more than 3 million have been released. We want those other 3 million released. And among them are these 50 pages that entail, as the New York Times said, claims made in 2019 by a woman who came forward after Mr. Epstein's arrest to say she'd been sexually assaulted by both Mr. Trump and Epstein when she was 13 to 15 years old. And it goes on to say that there were 4 interviews with this woman, and only one of those interviews was released. Where are the other 3? Now, we know the other 3 exist because they are in the index. And yet, the pages are missing. How can anyone justify that these interviews have not been released? So, that is a massive cover-up by this administration. It's a massive and unacceptable cover-up. We also know from the Telegraph that there are 6 secret storage units rented across the country by Epstein that may have contained information that the Department of Justice hasn't apparently attempted to retrieve. By unanimous consent, the Senate said, yes, we passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Senator Schumer came forward and tried to strengthen that act with some real penalties, and the Republican whip objected. Well, if Republicans were with us on seeking full disclosure, why object to putting more teeth into this bill? We all together, Democrats and Republicans, should be saying yes on transparency for the public, yes on accountability for the perpetrators, and yes for the closest thing we can get to justice for the victims.
What Senator Jeff Merkley is doing here is not just venting frustration. He's building a case that this is no longer about document management. It's about whether the federal government is honoring its own transparency mandate in one of the most disturbing criminal scandals in modern history. Let's slow this down and unpack what's actually at stake. Merkley references the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which he introduced alongside Senator Ben Ray Lujan. The language he quotes is important. No records shall be withheld, delayed, or redacted because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. That clause is doing a lot of work. It's aimed directly at a long-standing public suspicion that powerful individuals might be shielded not for legal reasons, but for political convenience. When Merkley says the 99-day deadline has passed and the files have not been released according to law, he's making a procedural accusation. That's not just rhetoric. When Congress
passes transparency legislation, compliance is not optional. If the Department of Justice has not fulfilled the statutory requirements, that becomes an oversight issue, potentially even a separation of powers issue. He also raises a troubling contradiction. Some victim names and photos were not properly redacted, while redactions appear heavy for individuals who may be implicated. That dynamic, overexposure of victims, overprotection of the powerful, is exactly the kind of imbalance that fuels public distrust. In high-profile investigations, redactions are supposed to protect the vulnerable first. If the opposite seems to occur, even unintentionally, it damages credibility.